Hello, and welcome to the Coach Right podcast, where we explore how to turn coaching expertise into published pages. I'm your host, Helen O'Neill, portfolio career specialist, author, and creator of Coach Right, the writing space and program specifically designed for coaches. You can get the episode show notes and your free guide to publishing options at coachright.co.uk. It's time for the next chapter. My guest today is Fatima Syed, and the story of how her book, Yaqeen, Stitch from Sorrows, came to be is a powerful one. We talk about the power words have to help us heal and the importance of human connection. Her journey is an inspirational one, and it's a powerful conversation. At the time of recording, Fatima shared that she was about to embark on treatment for cancer. She tells me she's on the mend. I'm sure you'll be as pleased to hear that as I was. In personal news, I spent yesterday in a room with other coaches talking strategy at Joanna Lott's Dare Greatly event. It was approximately 11 billion degrees in London, so me and a very large bottle of water and a portable fan headed across town. And it's safe to say the day did not disappoint. There's something unique about being in a room full of coaches with a shared purpose, and Jo has an incredibly warm, welcoming way of approaching her events. This is the second time I've attended, the last one being in November last year. I was just toying with Coach Right at the time, wondering why there weren't any other book coaches serving coaches, whether there'd be a market, whether it was too niche. And every time that day that I said books, people's eyes lit up, and it was the place where I committed. On that day, we wrote a letter to ourselves, and Jo posted it to us a few months later. It arrived on the doorstep, and I'd completely forgotten about it. But what we'd done is send an intention out into the world. And you know what? I did everything that I said I wanted to do in that letter. It's a powerful activity, and one that's well worth doing. Yesterday's focus was all about the sales funnel. Now, as coaches, we can feel a bit icky about sales, can't we? We don't go into practice to be salespeople. We go into practice to serve. But if no one knows you exist or that you have services for sale, you don't need me to tell you that you won't have a sustainable business. In fact, you probably won't have a business at all. I've got a lovely long list of takeaways from the day that I'm going to be working through later today. It was such an energizing space and reminded me once again how important it is to prioritize face-to-face connection. I was asked during the breakout if I plan to run anything in person, and the answer is yes. I have the seed of an idea for a day workshop, probably around springtime 27. So watch out for details on that. Oh, and as a little aside, I did share with my table that one of the ways I've been able to increase my content production without introducing AI slop into the process was that I quite often dictate my notes for these introductions while I'm out walking. And that's exactly what I did on my walk back from the train station yesterday. In other personal news, the Resilience book is back from the editor, and I have been working through the final amendments. That means I have one eye on the next stage, and I'm working towards an autumn publication date. To help with the launch, I would love to invite you to join my advanced reader team. If you've never done this before, you will get what we call an ARC, or an advanced reader copy. This is a free digital copy of the book around 6 weeks before publication date. The idea is that you get a chance to read it before anybody else, and if you're happy to do so, on launch day, you leave an honest review to help book discoverability. If you'd like to take part, drop me an email, helen@coachright.co.uk, and I'll add you to the team. Perfect if you love personal development books, and very useful if you've never launched a book with an ARC team before and just want to see what it's like. You will often hear me talk about the similarities between the business side of coaching and authorship. And one of the things that is vital for both is having a mailing list. You can have as many posts as you like on socials, but none of those connections belong to you. Your community is your business. For those of you that are on my list, you'll know there is a weekly email every Friday called Coach Write Reflections. That list lives on MailerLite. It's a service that I've recommended for years. This week, they became one of the many providers that have announced changes to their pricing model. They're reducing their free plan from 500 to 250 subscribers. I think that's a bit of a shame, to be honest, because it takes a while to build a list. But I do understand in this economic climate, organisations are having to consider their business models. But it's also a really good reminder to keep on top of your list admin. Now, I keep my list tight, clearing out people who don't engage and keeping open rates and engagement up. As I've said before, I consider my list my community. It's a way that I connect with people that have a shared interest. So for people that reply, I will always see those emails personally and I reply to them individually. But it's a tricky one because 250 subscribers isn't really enough to run a sustainable business from, which means you're highly likely to be paying before you get a return. There are alternatives, and if you have a list already, you might be considering whether or not this is the time to swap. Kit, for example, has a very generous starter plan of up to 10,000 subscribers, which is more than enough for most of us at the beginning, but the trade-off comes later when the paid plan is more expensive. So if the long-term view is scale, this will mean more expense or moving your list again. This is a good reminder to review your tech stack on a regular basis and make sure you're getting a return on investment for each of the tools that you use. I quite like starting on free or low tiers with a new tool, getting a feel for it and adding functionality as I need it. But I'm also really strict with culling tools I don't use, and I recommend you do the same. But whatever mailing list provider you choose, what's important is that you do have a list and that you send people on that list something useful on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be weekly if that's not your thing. I love sending that newsletter and I couldn't imagine it not being part of my week. But if fortnightly is achievable for you or even monthly, go with that. This isn't an excuse to go running to Substack, which is brilliant for discoverability and engagement, but remember it's a blogging platform at its heart and should be considered an as well as rather than an instead of. In publishing news, Tim Ferriss put the cat amongst the pigeons this week when he revealed the decline in his self-help book sales over the past couple of years, stating people's use of AI as the cause. Now, long story short, his print sales dipped 57% from 2024 to 2025, and he says it's looking even worse this year. All formats combined, his sales were down around 45% in the second half of the year. He wrote, "My agent, who has decades of statements to compare against, put it bluntly. 2025 was the first big drop. 2026 looks more severe. And the only thing that's really changed in that time frame is the acceleration of AI. Some publishers point to the growth of YouTube and podcasts, and those certainly contribute, but I think they are relative rounding errors." His full post, along with the comments, is worth the read, especially if you're in the prescriptive non-fiction category, and by that I mean self-help. Ferriss says that he believes authors and publishers will need to leverage and focus on experience rather than information and help very targeted groups achieve transformation. I wonder where we've heard that before. Here, last but not least, I want to give a quick shout out to researcher Damien van Caripiet, who is conducting primary research on the topic of AI in the fiction space. The study intends to examine how and why professional creative fiction writers use artificial intelligence to support their writing, or if they don't use it, what are their reasons for this? So if you have published fiction and want to take part, it doesn't take very long. I've taken part myself. Go to dreadfulfascination.org. Right, that's enough from me. It's time for the next chapter. Welcome to the Coach Right podcast. My guest today is Dr. Fatima Syed, a digital transformation leader in the NHS. She's an ICF accredited coach and a poet. Fatima blends strategy with soul, helping women rise, reset, and step into their power through her platform Navigating Change and her Instagram community, Stitched from Sorrows. Her book, Yaqeen, Stitched from Sorrows, was born after a near-death experience where poetry became part of her healing journey. She's joining us today in a deeply real chapter of her life, currently between cancer surgery and upcoming radiotherapy, which brings even more depth to her work. Welcome to the show, Fatima.
Thank you, Helen. And it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for inviting me.
I am really looking forward to our conversation today. We're going to cover lots of rich topics, I'm sure. If we can start by telling us about you and your path to publication.
So, how do I start? I'm a single mom who migrated from Pakistan to England, and in 2004 raised 2 kids here. I always tell everyone I'm a social migrant. I came here for the freedom to raise my kids on my own as a single mom, and that's been brilliant. I have 2 kids who are all grown up, university, working, proud mom. And like you mentioned, I also work in the NHS in the digital transformation space, and I've got a PhD in social policy. So I'm quite a mix of sets and experiences, and that's, I think, comes in the form of the book that I'm sharing. My coaching, came across coaching, which I found really helpful, was when I was recovering from my accident. It was a car accident. I was in an induced coma for 6 days. I had a brain injury because of that car accident. And when I woke up from coma, I still don't have memory of the accident. I didn't know what had happened. And it was a really weird, unusual, more like a film set thing that you wake up and you don't remember where you are and why you are there and what has happened. And it's been 10 now. I mean, so in 2012, so it's more than a decade now that I've been kind of trying to get back to myself and my past self. But I should say that now a new self. I'm not who I was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. The whole healing and processing of going through different things have helped me. And as life would have it, and as you've mentioned, now at the moment, I'm in the middle of dealing another crisis, another uncertain situation, which is like a cancer diagnosis. So that's me in a nutshell. A lot of challenges, but out of that, I have brought a book out. I am a qualified coach because I found coaching was brilliant. It helped me understand myself and raise awareness and help me develop a more positive can-do attitude towards life. And that's why I'm a coach, and I do some like I said, I do volunteer coaching for the NHS, but I'm also provide one-to-one coaching as and where I can. And I do, yeah. So that's
Amazing.
me.
And so often writing comes to us or supports us during a challenging time. And obviously, as you've told your story, kind of, you almost say, oh, I was in a coma. And obviously that's an incredibly life-changing, life-impacting situation to be. How did your poetry form part of your healing journey?
So I used to write poems. I don't know, everyone who was in school would say, oh, and I was a schoolgirl, I used to write a poem. So I'm one of those people who used to write poems and had
So
them.
was I.
Yeah, exactly. So I had poems. I won't say I class in my book. If you read, I class myself. I'm not a poet. Yeah, ask me. I really associated this poetry with healing. But before I used to write poems, and then it was a big gap. Didn't write any words. Didn't write. You get in the humdrum of life, working, corporate job, doing your, studying, running around and stuff. And then after my accident, you mentioned, I make it sounds light and I make it light, but maybe because I now think of it as what I've become from that point of view. But
It's become part of you.
it was a very difficult time when I woke up to make sense of what had happened. I just didn't know. And I was just listening to people's stories of telling me what happened. And this is why the title of my book is Yaqeen, Stitched from Sorrows, because there was a lot of things I was dealing with. It was physical because I had pain and I had headaches and fatigue, memory loss, emotional state where I was really confused and there was a knock of my self-confidence. And in my book, there was a point where I just wanted to let go of life. It was too difficult. It was too consuming, too kind of challenging for me to kind of understand and move on with my life. And plus, at that time, my children were still living with me and were dependent on me. So it was difficult. So one night, you know, I suffered from insomnia, couldn't sleep. And these words were coming in my head. They were really, 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 were going round and round and round and round. And I just picked up my phone. And that note section we have in Apple, I won't say everyone. And I just said, let me just write down what it is. And I actually just wrote the sentences that came. And they were quite like in a paragraph form. And then afterwards, I looked at it and I thought, oh, there's some sort of a rhythm. And then I kind of set it in a poetry poem form and I posted it on Facebook. And that's where my journey started. And these poems, and that poem is the first poem of my book as well. So I kept it as the first poem. So these poems kept on. This book is a culmination of 10 years of poetry, I would say. And like you said, these poems came to me at really, really odd times. I was by the sea sitting there. I had my phone on me. All of us, you have your phone. So I wrote that down. I was on a bus ride in France. I wrote that down and I time marked it. So I exactly wrote where I was, what date it was, and what time these words came. And I always say some books you sit down and you write, and you develop a framework, and there's some books that just write themselves. So this is how it was. These poetries were coming. I was putting on Facebook and my friends would remark on it. And I had a lot of people saying to me, we can relate with what you're saying. And it was really weird because I was coming from a very different place, but everyone was putting their own meaning to it and sharing it with me, which was really powerful. That poetry gives you that space. You allow people to imagine and link it with your own experiences. I think that's really powerful. And then I was like, my friends were kept on saying, why don't you publish a book? And I said, no, they're not good enough. I'm not a poet. I don't have a master's in creative writing or literature or whatever. But then when I was turning 50, I thought, you know what, as a 50th group, let me put all the poems together and I'll just make a few copies and give it to my friends who have been part of the journey of my accident to this point of, my whole healing journey. And when I put it together, I saw this pattern of my poetry changing as I developed, as I healed, as I developed my self-confidence, I developed my belief in myself, as I tackled with my limiting, beliefs and stuff. And I thought, wow, my poems reflect the journey of healing that I've been on. Yeah. And then I showed it to someone. There's an MK's author, Milton Keynes authors group, and I showed it to the chair. And he said to me, oh, Fatima, you've got a story to share, so you must get it published. And this was a guy, he said, poetry is not my remit, but they loved it. There are two guys, I showed it to them, really strangers who had no kind of affiliation with me. And they said, you have a story to tell. And that's where I ended up publishing the book and got the confidence to publish the book. That's it. You need confidence to publish the book and say people, might. But my book is divided into 3 sections. So there are 55 poems in total. It's a thin book. But it's got 3 sections. A section where I was in really, really depressed state. That's my early poems. Then there's a section where I got into acceptance. And then there's a section on hope where I got quite confident, and it's 10 years journey of it. And I think if you look at the book, I follow the grief cycle. There's denial.
I was just thinking Kubler-Ross. Yeah.
Exactly. I follow the grief cycle to the bit, and there's acceptance. And if you're not a poet, you're not interested in poetry, I have put some text. So before each poem section, there's a narrative. There's a bit of my story of where was I, how I, and then at the end, there's a bit about what helped me get better. Because the doctors, I mean, they were like pretty, they were not that hopeful, let me say, that I will even come back with full senses, or I'll be, because, I had a hemorrhage, and they were saying they don't know. So they were surprised at how quickly my recovery was. But I give it to a lot, like the words. I think writing is a powerful tool for healing. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And do you find that poetry finds its way into your coaching now as well?
I I mean, I've met some coaches who use poetry as kind of this a tool, but I haven't. But I do think there's some poems that are, or I usually use little phrases or things like that, but
Mm,
not substantially. I think where poetry comes into my coaching is it's like I said, when people were reading my poem and they were putting their own narrative, I think it's given me reading it and writing it also gives me that thing of a deeper understanding and allowing that space for others and others understanding. So in that way, but no,
yeah.
I've used my book like because I'm a resilient coach and I kind of try coach, people coaching about dealing with changes, whether it's career change, whether it's, different. And I've used that book on, sometimes my poems and say, hey, this is what I've been going through and something
Yeah.
on conference.
And it's always particularly useful, isn't it, when someone says you should publish this and you're like, great, how do I go about doing that? So, how did you go from this collection of poems that takes the reader on a journey to a physical printed book?
Yeah, I didn't realize it's a minefield. Oh my God. You think writing a book is difficult? It's like, oh, it's publishing it and marketing. So I haven't done really good at marketing. I think I'm still a novice at that. But I think what one I was really very clear was that I wanted to go the independent path. So I wanted to self-publish it. And the sole reason was that self publishing gave me the freedom to choose how I want. And what I've done is those poems are very raw poems. Like I used to call them my 5 minute poems. It's really literally written on I haven't changed the words. I haven't text. So I wanted to keep the poems in their raw, authentic way. So that's why self-publication was very important for me to have that autonomy over my creation. Um, and then I found so the narrative I think there was so the narrative I wrote, I shared it with a few friends to read and see if it makes sense. And I'll be honest, then I used AI, just
Mhm.
paragraphs where I felt, oh, it wasn't clear as an editor. So I would say, oh, this paragraph doesn't sound right. Could you pick up where and then rephrase it? So I've really light touch use of AI, and it was more like just to it's mostly my narrative, just being English isn't my first language. So just making sure that, yeah, okay. And then, when you read some sentences, my English teacher always used to say, read it aloud. And if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. So those little sections I would go and say, hey, and when I'll just a warning with AI as well, because sometimes what it churns, it doesn't make sense as well. So you have
Little.
to be very critical when you are so it's not, you can't just abolish your responsibility and say, hey, AI says this is right. So it's not my, so you have to be a critical friend of the AI as well. So
Oh, I like that.
yeah,
Critical friend. I might
yeah,
use that in the
yeah,
future.
critical friend of AI because, but then what I did was I found on Fiverr this I think it's called Hamad Publishing there, and he did the formatting. So I didn't realize how technical it was, but I didn't have the time. So I work full time in the NHS, so squeezing that time to write a book was intense, and then I think retraining and learning how to format was another mind. So I used him. He was really good. So he formatted the book. The cover, which you said is fantastic. I've had so many people praise the cover. I
The
mean,
cover is beautiful. It
so
is beautiful.
I got this was she was she's an illustrator. She illustrates books and stuff, but she's a Pakistani woman in Pakistan. Someone recommended to her, and she was brilliant. I shared my book with her. I gave her the concept, and she then came up with actually the flowers she made irises. She said this is a symbol for hope, and then the butterfly. So yeah, so she kind of understood the concept of the book and gave me, and then obviously the little fine tuning and everything is this, but so the title, so the book, even the title, it's you have to do your research. It's not easy. So the title again, I wanted a title which gave a nod to my heritage. So Yaqeen means faith. I think this whole journey, my book is all about developing self-belief, and it's belief in yourself, but and also in a higher power. So that's like realizing self-awareness. So I think for me, it was really important that I have something to show my kind of heritage, where I come from. So Yaqeen is that word, an Arabic word. And then Stitch from Sorrows was literally, it felt like when people were telling me about what happened, and to me, it felt like I was stitching things that people were telling me into a story. So that's why. So the title is as important, but it's very personal. This book is I say it's a personal project. It was a passion project. And yeah, but it's a minefield. It's not easy.
So what lessons have you learned that you would impart your wisdom on those people that are thinking, oh, I'd like to write a book and publish a book, but that minefield, oh, that sounds a bit tricky. What advice have you got for them?
I mean, my book took 10 years in the making and another 2 years in formatting and, writing up. But what I feel is that if I think everyone at least have one single book. And I thought when I wrote my thesis, PhD thesis was an 80,000 word. And I thought that was the book. That my book, one book in me is out. And I thought that was my book, but I didn't know there are more. So I think if you want to write, just write. I've seen some people, like I've got another book in my head, and I'm doing it very formally, and I've got a framework. But I think just write is like, as a coach, we say just take an action. So get a plan, and then so consistency is the key. And I realize I put all these deadlines. I'll have my book written, this chapter on this, that it didn't work. But what deadline I gave myself was that every day I'll find 1 hour to work on my book. And I didn't care whether it was in the morning, in the evening, in middle of the night, but I promised myself 1 hour. So my thing is write, put a plan that suits you. And then sometimes when that 1 hour turned into 3 because I was into the throw of it. So that the consistency is important. And the other thing is, we don't talk a lot about it, but the underpinning of this is a lack of confidence in your own self, in your voice, in your words. So find a few people and show your writing to them, and not friends and but maybe your network, someone who's not that close to you. And that feedback would help you as well. I think that gave me the confidence to publish. But I don't know. I mean, I don't coach writing, but I just say, write, sit down and just write and don't care. Just dump it. This is how I wrote my narrative. Again, all the narration is sitting down on the phone and not caring about the grammar, just whatever came into my head, and then you've got time to tidy it up, leave it. And then you will review it. This book went through, I don't know how many revisions. I've forgotten how many times I've revised my words. So
it's best not to think the first one, how many times you've revised it. I'd try and blank that out.
but I'll just say, just do it. Just get on there and just do it. Just write.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that advice about getting somebody who's not your closest friends and family to read your book and give you honest feedback. That beta reader feedback is it's actually lovely to be asked to be a beta reader. If somebody's an avid reader and would fit your criteria of somebody that would buy your book, it's, if you've got your coaching network or your colleagues or people kind of in a writing community, it's such a lovely thing to do as a reader as well as receive as the writer. And people often overlook it because they feel like they don't want to ask, they don't want to be a problem to others, whereas actually it's great from both sides.
And I would also suggest, like, if someone says, hey, I'm writing a book, sometimes, like I said, self-confidence. If you say, hey, can I have a look? So as if, like a published writer or whatever, or a coach, or a good friend, or also give that opening to the writer as well, because sometimes, you're so self-conscious and, lacking confidence, which I wouldn't open up, but I went into the authors group. I read other stuff and listened to their stories. That would also say, find a community. So there were some published writers, novices like me. And then I got a confidence after 2-3 sessions to actually say, would you like to have a look? But they were giving me the space to say, hey, yeah, we're happy to have a look at the chapter and stuff. So I think the onus is on the other person as well. If you're interested, show that interest and say, hey, be happy to read it. So
absolutely. I always say when you're a reader, there's no competition in the writer space in the way there is in other industries, because as a writer you can probably write 1 or 2 books, best case. I mean, I know some people do write more than that, but let's say you're quite a speedy writer and you can manage that, but you can read loads more books than that. So of course you want other people to share their work with you because you want to read it. Well, I do anyway. So You touched on marketing earlier, and that is one of my favourite questions, how to get the book into the hands of readers. So what have you done in that area?
So I could do better, let's say this.
We could all do better with this.
I haven't made number one on Amazon as yet, but I think it's because yeah, life got into my way one way or the other. But what I found, I think the most satisfying and powerful form is going into the book fairs and setting up a stall. I've never sold anything in my life, so my book first, like like in that way, and then having your you set up your stall. Mine was very simple, but I think what was the most that I sold three or four books. But what was really powerful was, and I think if you're lacking some self-confidence in yourself as a writer, as I was when people went through all the books stalls, and then they came back and bought your book.
Mm.
What a set, because you could see them traveling, going through one stall and picking up books, and then they come back to you. And then one of the other thing is about the audience, because we always say, oh, you need to write a book with an audience in mind. And my audience in mind was, oh, in my book, I've said, oh, dedicated to people who are suffering from anxiety, depression, loneliness. And I thought females would be more because we are more emotional. So I thought it will appeal to a female. I was thinking of middle kind of over 30s, 50s, 60s kind of age set. First book sale surprised it. There was a young girl. She must be around 20. Was watching her. It was a very short, small book fair. And she went through, so she came to mine, and then she went through all the stalls. And the only book she bought was, she came back to mine and she bought mine. She was 20 or something. And I thought, I never thought it would appeal to a younger generation. And then on the same thing, there was this guy with him, his wife and a partner and a baby. And he came and he started flipping through the book. And I was telling her, and he said, okay, I'm going to go and get my wife. She's got the purse. I'm going to pay and buy. He bought my book. He was like a 30-year-old. And that surprised me. Like, I never thought a guy, it's like, this is our assumption. So I'm sometimes saying with marketing. So book fairs are powerful. You get an opportunity to network, you get an opportunity to read your section out to the people. So that was also nice. It's powerful. I joined some literary events. That's been my favorite. But I haven't actually touched on Amazon advertisement at the moment. And like I said, I haven't really. So I'm looking for advice. So anyone who can help me with marketing, I will grad. But this is this goal this year. Once I've done with my personal health issues, then maybe look at how I can market my book. But book fairs have been my favorite.
And what I love about that is that it connects with why you wrote the book. So again, you were talking about writing the book for a specific reader, and absolutely people do that. With your book, the book was part of your healing journey first, and then it became something that could support others. And so actually the fact that you've gone to a face-to-face connection, sort of human to human way of getting your book into the hands of readers really sits with the whole purpose behind the book. And of course, we can all learn to do Amazon ads, and we can all post on social media and all the rest of it, and that will generate sales. But actually for you, the purpose of the book is what's driven getting it into the hands of readers. And that's why I asked the question in that way, rather than how do you market or how do you sell, because it's not always the same thing. So it's really resonated with me that for you it's not.
And it's really nice way of putting it. I mean, you made me think, Helen, because I never thought why book fair were more, but it's the human to human kind of interaction. But also, I think I forgot to mention, but I have set up a community on Instagram as well. But it's mostly to share my kind of poetry. But have I made any book sales from that? It's very hard to know. But I know that people. I thought I would explore the TikTok bookstore or shop, but I haven't done that. But I think they are different. There are a lot of venues. I think all I've mostly invested in is just podcasts. Being invited to speak about depression and my book. So, and then the book fairs have been just the only, yeah. But you made me think maybe that's why I like human to human. I am one of those people. I'm a people person. So I think that worked for me.
Yeah, amazing. And you alluded to another one. So there's sounds like there's still writing in your life. How's it showing up now?
I think there's more stories for me to tell. I think when I was writing this book, I told you the two guys who kind of helped me, gave me the confidence at the first kind of beta readers. So he did say, add more about your life into it. And I have kind of focused this on just my healing journey and what I was going through. But the other books, I'm quite a big on women, empowerment and strength and resilience and stuff. And especially being an immigrant myself. So the other book I'm kind of thinking is writing stories of those women in their own words. I've know a few women and how they found, and I've got single women and how they got into this, in the UK, and how they found their space, their voice, their worth. If that it's the, but this one, I think I'm going to do it differently. I've got a framework.
Yeah.
So I need to. I'm thinking this time I might go to publisher and might approach some publishers. I haven't done that, but this is maybe. But that's why I said every book has its own feel and tone, and the book will tell you
Yeah.
which way you want to go. This is what I feel.
Yeah.
Your book will guide you. So if you listen and take time to listen and reflect, which we all coaches need to do anyway, you will learn that. And that's why I think my book, it's poetry and it doesn't have any tools, or I won't say, oh, there's a tool or you've got this framework you can follow. And it's not like a coaching book. But what it does is, if you as a coach want to know, especially your client, where they come, I'm sure we all have these clients, you ask questions and they seem, I don't have any purpose. I don't know is and this book, because it's very raw, it's very authentic, it's really comes from the heart. You will say how you can see the client's perspective, of those who doesn't seemingly might look very confident, which I did, and look very healed.
Mm.
People never thought like I was suffering from it, anything. But inside, this was my turmoil. And I think if you want to understand what people going through change or grief or loss, and I equate, even when you lose your job, it's a loss of an identity. If you lose a
Yeah.
partner, it's a loss of an identity. If you have a heartbreak, it's a loss of an identity of who you were with that person. So this book is all about finding your identity, your new self after a loss of identity, because I lost my memory, and I struggled with memory loss. And it was like finding the new me, who I am. And that's what coaching does. And that's why I love coaching. It's future focused. It helped me focus to the future and not think about what had happened to me. It's more around, okay, this has happened. Where do I want to go next? And it gave me the power to decide. Any coach who's really interested in the human aspect of, emotions. And I think emotions are so powerful and wonderful. And I love being human. I wouldn't want to be an angel. Why would I do good all the time? It's like we are blessed to have these emotions and to feel them. And as a coach, we tell them, sit with it, even if it's sadness, even if it's grief, even if it's frustration, even if it's anger, just sit with it. And that's what the book tells you. It gives you that understanding. And I think when you read, you would, it will trigger you. Some points will trigger you, some points. And it's a 100-page book. But I think the feedback I've got is that it takes time. It makes people think. And that's the purpose of the
Mm.
book. You think and see how it relates to you. This is my story, but your take from it will be different. And I would love to hear from you guys. If anyone listening buys the book, read it, please. Yeah. I would love to hear what you think about it.
I think all of that is incredibly powerful for people listening, because we all come to a writer's aspiration from different places, and sometimes writing finds us. And I talk about writing being a solace sometimes, and it's, we write when we're little and then we're told to put it away because it's not a proper job. And
Yeah.
so we kind of box that creativity up and we put it in the back of the cupboard. And then something happens to some of us that makes us revisit that. And obviously, in your experience, that's been the need to heal. The form has been the perfect form for you to be able to do that and to go on that journey. And it's almost, you talked about confidence as well before, when it's almost like as you went through that journey, your confidence developed with the poetry, which is a lovely synergy.
Yeah, and it's amazing how I think we don't realize I think we box things in different aspects, like, but we don't realize that underpinning all our losses is a loss of identity.
Mm.
So so we box it. Oh, my husband died. I'm grieving. I'm heartbroken. My partner, whatever, ditched me. Um, I lost my job. Have got a financial worry. Oh, where am I going to feed the kids and stuff? But if you look really one layer down, and this is what I invite with my book, is look a layer down. And the layer down is we are all suffering from that loss of identity we had with that job, with that person, with that situation we were. And I think for me, we we as humans, I mean, we're designed like that. We love our comforts, and we always want to be happy. But what life has taught me is that actually pain or loss is a way, is an opportunity to develop yourself and to identify your strengths. And I think we are always, and it's around us. Oh, we need to be happy. We are in the sun. We should be sunbathing, have a beach body, and all that stuff. But the reality is that it's a journey, and everything doesn't, you won't always have a beach body, you won't always be happy. This is what life is, and it's just knowing how to handle and what to do. Like I mentioned cancer, like it took me more than a decade to get to a good place, and I thought 2026 is going to be the year I'm going to go for my higher job, promotion, because I've been suffering from lack of self-confidence. People, when they see me, they don't believe it, but I've had panic attacks and going on presentations, and I get really nervous, and really I've had struggled with it really badly. So I was thinking 2026, I feel really a lot like my old self, but I'm not my old self, if that makes sense. My new confident self, let's put that.
Yeah.
And then this cancer diagnosis came out of the blue in November, and it just rocked my world. But it's interesting, and I know I've healed because I have dealt with it totally different to what I dealt with when I was coming through the accident and stuff. And one thing it is that the whole journey taught me that I have a choice to make, and I've dealt with not denial. I've done it with the acceptance phase of it is what
Yeah.
it is. And it doesn't mean I don't have bad moments, and I don't, I've spent time, I've had some sad moments, and why me think, but that's been a moment, and I knew, and I've allowed it to myself. So I think life has just taught me to go with the flow. So if you think you want to write, just do it. Yeah, if you want to, I don't know, climb Kilimanjaro, just go and do it, but just do it. And something will
Maybe
be
go with someone if you want to climb Kilimanjaro.
yeah. No, I've got this. I would love to do actually this year, I was hoping to do the Everest Base Camp. And now this has happened. So I'm just hoping that I'll live 2026 to just heal and see what happens. And then hopefully, yeah, that's something I would love to do it. Not the Everest, but the base camp would be good enough
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, a good goal to have. Fatima, you are inspirational. Your outlook and the way that you have approached the troubles that you've had and the challenges that life has thrown at you with such positivity. I'm sure lots of people listening today will take a great deal of inspiration from that. So thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. If we can close by, can you share with listeners where they can find you, your services, and your beautiful book online?
So yeah, first of all, thank you so much. And I'll just you can find me on LinkedIn. So I'm Dr. Fatima Shadia. Syed Shadia is my middle name. So happy to link in with you. So LinkedIn, I'm there. I've got webpage which is called navigatechange.co.uk. It's still in work in progress. So that's my kind of coaching space. But if you want to reach out to me, the best thing would be join my Instagram community, which is Stitch from Sorrows. And yeah, and just message me through that. And, I would love to hear your feedback on the podcast, on my book. If you want to learn more about the coaching journey, or how, as a coach or as a client, I mean, I'm happy to have a chat, and always there.
Amazing. And I'll make sure all of the links for all of that are in the show notes. Thank you. That has been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you so much, Helen.
Such an inspiring story. Fatima's strength, generosity, and positivity really stuck with me after we spoke. Next week, it's the footnotes, where I'll be answering a question that was raised by Dorothy. Should you write in British or American English? Other flavours are available. If you have a question you'd like me to cover in the footnotes, drop me an email, helen@coachwrite.co.uk, and I will see you for the next chapter. Thank you for joining me today. You can get the show notes and your free guide to publishing options at coachwrite.co.uk. Remember to subscribe and leave a review on your podcatcher of choice. Your words can make a difference. A review can too. If you'd like to connect, find me on LinkedIn, O'Neill Helen, that's O'Neill, ONEILL, or on Instagram at coach_write. I'll see you for the next chapter.